It is time to look at the Russia-Ukraine conflict from an alternative perspective. USA, Britain and its Western allies, that is the Western Empire, follows and enforces what they refer to as rule-based world order, and they themselves want to set the rules of the game. This is quite dangerous. In the international affairs, in the geopolitical matters, it is the international law that should take precedence over the rule-based world order, which is a bogus concept and a total nonsense. This is really a hypocrisy. Yet, United States of America, Britain, and Western Empire insist on rule-based world order, and they themselves want to set the rules of the game. President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and his Russia has challenged this very notion of a rule-based world order. America's invasion and subsequent occupation of Vietnam was a crime against humanity, a genocide of immense proportion in which 2.5 million innocent Vietnamese lost their lives. Millions got maimed and displaced. It was a case of violation of international law and crime against humanity that led to a humanitarian disaster of massive proportion. But United States of America and West justified it in the name of rule-based world order. United States of America and West set a false narrative called war on terror through a false flag operation by orchestrating the destruction of World Trade Center, that is the event 9/11. It was an inside job, a psyop, or a psychological operation. In reality, World Trade Center Twin Towers were pulverized using directed energy weapon or DU systems. I found the research work carried out by Dr. Judy Woods to be the most authentic one in this regard. I have published a video titled 9/11 and Directed Energy Weapon Elite Trump Card on this very channel. You may watch. Destruction of World Trade Center was a classic example of application of political science principle called Hegelian dialectic, through which Anglo-American Western Empire was able to set a false narrative called war on terror. Under the pretext of waging a war on terror, USA, Britain and its Western allies invaded and illegally occupied Afghanistan. Was it not a crime against humanity that brought enormous suffering for people? More than 1 million people perished in this process. It was a massive humanitarian disaster. Was it not a violation of international law? Yes, it was. Next, Iraq was targeted. Iraq was invaded under the pretext that Saddam Hussein was having weapons of mass destruction. Again, it was a big lie. Again, 1 million people died in the invasion and subsequent occupation of Iraq. Saddam Hussein and his family members were brutally murdered. Was it not a violation of international law? Yes, it was. Next, Libya was invaded and occupied under the pretext of waging a war on terror. Again, almost 1 million people perished. Muammar Gaddafi and his family members were brutally murdered. Was it not a violation of international law? Yes, it was. Next, Syria. A civil war was orchestrated by the Western intelligence and Syria was invaded. Plan was regime change as always. Was it not a violation of international law? Yes, it was. So who created this Islamic State? United States of America, obviously, Britain, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the Western allies, that is the Western Empire. Former US Senator John McCain and Hillary Clinton's involvement in Benghazi Gate is well known and well documented. Didn't this bring tremendous suffering for the humanity? Yes, it did. Millions killed and a large number of people in West Asia and North Africa got displaced. They became refugees. World has become sick of West's perpetual war on terror and regime change formula. Every single place where American military put its foot on ground turned into a quagmire. Today, these countries stand amid ruins. The social fabric got stretched to the extent that it got torn apart and it would never be the same. Didn't United States of America and West bomb Serbia in Kosovo War? Yes, they did. Who has given them the authority to invade country after country under the false pretext of war on terror, or for that matter, to keep peace around the world? Who has given them the authority to kill Saddam Hussein and his family members? Who has given them the authority to kill Muammar Gaddafi and his family members? Is it not a violation of international law? Yes, it is. It was. And all these were justified under the pretext of rule-based world order. NATO is a pure evil. NATO expansionism is the root cause behind this conflict. Before condemning Russia's action in Ukraine, we must understand how it started. NATO was established in 1949 as a 12-member alliance. Today, it has grown to 30-member alliance. United States of America and West violated its promise not to extend NATO beyond Germany in the Eastern Europe. United States of America and Western intelligence orchestrated a coup in 2013 in Ukraine in order to overthrow legitimate Viktor Yanukovych government. And following that, West would instead pro-Western puppet called Petro Poroshenko. Again, the same age-old formula of regime change. Poroshenko and later Volodymyr Zelensky would start pushing for a NATO membership, threatening Russia's security and sovereignty. NATO and American missile systems in Ukraine is perceived in Russia as a nuclear blackmailing, as missiles fired from Ukraine would reach major Russian cities in minutes, giving Russia virtually no time to retaliate. In between 1969 and 1971, Bengalis in East Pakistan were persecuted and slaughtered. More than 3 million Bengalis were murdered. It was a genocide of massive proportion. Over 1 million women got raped. It was a crime against humanity. It finally ended with a war between India and Pakistan in 1971, which India won handsomely with help from Russia. It was a decisive victory for India, and Pakistan was cut into two and Bangladesh was liberated. Throughout those dark days, Pakistan continued to enjoy the patronage of United States of America, Britain, and the West. West remained silent and continued to support this crime against humanity, and finally, when the war broke out between India and Pakistan, and once they found that Pakistan was losing, United States of America and Britain ended up sending carrier battle groups to threaten India. Russians saved the day for India and prevented a catastrophe. Who scripted these crimes against humanity? Henry Kissinger, a Jewish German refugee turned America's 8th national security advisor and an open advocate of Zionism. Peace-loving people around the world, particularly the people from second and third world countries, must unite and stand against Western empire, which is a pure evil. We must condemn NATO expansionism. We must condemn United States of America and West for its inhuman actions and genocide and human rights violation in Vietnam, its tacit support towards the genocide and mass murder of Bengalis in East Pakistan, that is Bangladesh, its barbaric brutality and genocide in Afghanistan, genocide and human rights violation in Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Serbia. We must understand that West's rule-based world order is a pure evil, and we must condemn this hypocrisy. International affairs must be governed by the international law. There is no scope of rule-based world order as perceived or as enforced by the G7 countries and Western empire. After all, we must understand that the Anglo-Saxon, German, French, Spaniard, Europeans turned white Americans wiped out the ethnic people of North and South America, that is, the Red Indians, and the same thing happened in Africa and to a lesser extent in India, China, and Indochina. Their hands are stained in bloods. It is time to unite against these mass murderers and teach these bastards a lesson.